There were many defeats before great victories, and you need to be able to endure those defeats without losing your hope. And you can only endure the defeats that are inevitable, because the people in power, the dark forces in power, and they are dark, are not going to yield easily. However right you are, however beautiful your actions are, they're going to hold on to power, and they're going to be very unscrupulous, and there's going to be a great deal of suffering. So prepare yourselves without being afraid, and know that if you do deep spiritual practice in faith, you will be given unimaginable strength and unimaginable power. And over time, your deepest impulses will become realized, and you'll be the pioneers of a wholly new way of being and doing everything.
The mystical, the mythical, and the mysterium. The realm of cosmic forces remains enigmatic. We may project our human perception onto the unknown or completely reject it. What we don't know scares us, fear of the other. It may be easy to dismiss mysticism as a way of the ancient ones. Yet, our mythical and mystical musings remain alive today through literature, poetry, music, and yes, through video games and shows like the Game of Thrones and Harry Potter. There is no separation.
Welcome to another episode of the Soulspace podcast. We are your hosts, Adrian and Thal. The lines between interviewer and interviewee become blurred as we shed our skin with modern-day mystic Andrew Harvey. We recorded this conversation a day after a poetry reading by Andrew here in Toronto to celebrate the release of his latest book, Turn Me to Gold, 108 Poems of Kabir. Andrew brings his energy and ecstatic presence as he shares his vision of sacred activism in response to our meaning crisis, or what he sees as a massive transformation of consciousness. Andrew was born in South India in 1952. He was educated in England and studied at Oxford University. By 1977, he became so disillusioned with life at Oxford, he returned to India, where a series of mystical experiences initiated his spiritual journey. Andrew has studied under many sages and saints from different traditions. He is the author of over 40 books and lectures internationally. It is our pleasure to bring you Andrew Harvey.
How lovely to be addressing you.
Yes.
How did you enjoy last night? How did it register in you?
It was amazing. I felt the poetry, your presence and your energy, and you know, I come from a Sufi background, so
My God. Oh.
yeah. So I was sitting there. I was like, yeah, this is what I already know, but felt it. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful when you had exactly that? To me, is the exact response, because we do know this.
Yes.
It is our reality.
Yeah.
And all the great ones like Kabir, they just wake up this knowledge within us. Kabir's not trying to be a guru. Mm-hmm. He's trying to empower us with our own authentic awareness, because he knows that everyone is secretly divine and has all of this knowledge.
Yes.
That's what I try to do. I couldn't. What a boring thing to be a guru, my God. Terrible. What a waste of time.
Absolutely.
When you could have all the fun in the world with people like you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you feel?
We were just talking. I'm really raw right now. I mean, from last night, something happened where,
yes,
to me, you mentioned lion a few times, the imagery of a lion, and you were the lion last evening. You roared with that power, and actually, I felt like the lions in the room all heard it. We heard the cry, and a part of me is kind of waking up to this realization of we got to act. You know, there's a sense of urgency, and I love that energy you're bringing. That
sacred consciousness, act from that wholeness within, that vibrant wholeness.
Yes,
and you'll be a lion in your own way. It's everybody's line is different. There are tender lines, there are soft lines, there are wild lines.
100%.
It's not. It's finding your own and unique inner line, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just do me, my big me, and then hope to wake up the lions in the room.
Yes.
I'm training the special forces.
Yeah.
You're definitely
It's
doing that.
important.
I want to share something with you before we start. I think it was almost 2 years ago or a year ago when you were on a podcast with Tammy Simone, Sounds True?
Yes.
Yes. And I was going through one of my many dark nights of the soul, and just right in the middle of the interview,
Good Sufi.
hope so. Right in the middle of the interview, you said one of the prayers that I've always utter in my practice, which is show me things as they are. And then you said that that's from one of your favorite teachers, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And when just the moment you said that, it hit so hard with me that I just wept. I had to stop the podcast and I wept for like 30 minutes. So just wanted to share that.
What a beautiful, one of the things that hurts me the most is the way that the Prophet is seen in the West. When you get a glimpse of who the Prophet is,
Yes.
how could you not weep for him now?
I love him, he's like,
Oh, God, of course.
he
The Prophet
embodies the
was
divine feminine. Like
everything.
his teachings were all about the divine feminine.
In the end, they absolutely were, because he says paradise is at the feet of the mothers.
Yes.
You remember?
Yeah.
Paradise is at the feet of the mothers. And the first phrase in the Quran is about Rahman and Rahim. Both come from Rahman, the womb.
Yeah.
God is mother first of all in the Quran. And it's impossible to read his life without being stunned by his tenderness.
Yes.
Look at the story of the cat. You know that wonderful story when he only has 2 tunics and his favorite cat is sleeping on one of the arms. He cuts off the arm of his tunic so as not to wake up the cat.
Yes.
Adab is feminine.
Yes. Yes.
Adab is entirely about tenderness and courtesy and respect and reverence. Those are feminine virtues. Until you know that, you know nothing about Islam.
You know nothing. Absolutely.
Nothing. And nothing about Islam.
Absolutely.
Why is Islam
Absolutely.
such a glorious
The
revelation?
most people that misunderstand Islam are Muslims. It's like
Wahhabis have no idea about the Prophet. If they could meet the Prophet, is out of his mind with suffering at what they've made of his revelation.
exactly. I believe that 100%.
And you can't imagine why all the great Sufi mystics have been so desperately and deeply and profoundly in love with him,
Yes.
because they know that he's the complete human being. No other teacher was
I
a
believe that.
husband, no other teacher would have said, I love women, perfume, and prayer.
Yeah.
That's a complete man.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
He's a complete guy. He loves women. He loves sex.
Yes, he did.
Passion for the beauty of celebrating with another being.
Yes. Yes.
And perfume, the mystery and beauty of the world. And then prayer, of course, it's the last one. It's the ultimate one. But nobody lived as complete a life as the Prophet. There's never been as complete a life as him.
I believe that. Thank you.
Oh, you know that.
Thank you.
That's why you're a Sufi. You're so lucky to love the Prophet so much.
Yeah, Allah Subhanahu wa
And what a life. So terrible, his life. And so much
So
suffering.
misunderstood.
And so
Up to this
pain.
day. Up to this day, yeah.
Oh, God, yes. But, he's still available to those who love him.
Yes, he is.
And you never see him, but you can... Some people see him, but I've never seen him, but I have felt him.
I felt him, yeah.
It's unlike anything.
Some people see him like even in like during the day, and have conversations with him. But
I'm looking forward to that particular. Please tell
me too. I'm looking forward to it. I will.
I think that's what you said. Yeah. I hope you will. Yeah. So glad you like that. That is such a blessing.
I'm just happy to be talking to you today. That's
me too.
So honored. Yeah.
May the Prophet peace. But people always say to me, "Why do you say peace be upon him?"
Yeah.
Are you kidding? This is the Prophet. And it's the traditional.
Yeah.
So I would never talk about the Prophet without honoring Islam in that way.
Yeah.
It would be very vulgar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But people have no conception of this.
Yeah.
The adab you need towards the holy ones.
Yes. Yes. All
Especially.
the holy ones from all traditions. Yes. Yeah.
Well, he would be the first to say that. He says it again and again. It got through him in the Quran again and again and again. Nobody loved Jesus more than the Prophet. Nobody loved Isaiah and Moses and Noah and all the great. And he says there are 100,000 teachers who have no names, who have been great prophets and great saints, women, men, and of all religions, shamans. The Prophet. This is not, it's much more than a religion, Islam. It's a vision of integrated wholeness. It's the most balanced vision ever given humanity. It has shadows, obviously. I mean, homophobia and misogyny and all the rest of it. But there weren't his shadows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. These are the shadows of dogma.
Yes, and the boys' club and all the rest of it.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I hear you.
It's not really, Rumi doesn't have those shadows.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the great Sufi mystical saints don't have those shadows.
And that's why they were killed. Someone like Al-Hallaj, he was killed by the orthodoxy. Yeah.
Oh, they were all outraged. Do you imagine what happened with Rumi? Can you imagine? They were freaked out, and he started dancing with this old man in the middle of Konya after being a good boy, giving speeches and quoting from the Quran. They thought he'd gone completely crazy, or even worse. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
They thought. Finally, they had to face that he was radiant with God, so they, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you.
What do we do?
Andrew, I feel like we want to do this in service of Kabir, right? I mean, this is one of the major reasons why we feel so excited and grateful that you agreed to come on, and this is just the beginning of your book launch, essentially. And
yes.
And last night, I mean, what we experienced with the poetry, I mean, it was so moving, and I'm still raw from that experience, still processing. But
when you say raw, I love that word. What do you mean by raw? What does raw feel like inside you now, right now? Let's have a conversation. I'd love to. Yeah. This is not me talking about Kabir. Yeah, I want to be with you in the Kabir field.
To me, raw are new feelings. So it's feelings that I'm not familiar with, and there is an element of, fear. Like, what is this? I'm confused, but it's making me, tune inward and try to hang on to it, try to be curious. So that's raw. There's just sensations in my body and these feelings that are all commingled. It's hard to put words to it. That's raw for me. It's pre-language.
It's pre-language. Why would you need to put words to it? Why do you need to? That's the danger, isn't it? Of trying too soon to get clear, not allowing the radiant confusion to breed its own revelation, to change one. It's just like falling in love, isn't it, with a person? It's scary when you meet someone you can't avoid, who can't categorize, you can't not love. And you know that once you've made that commitment to love, it's going to change your life. It's not just going to change your mind, it's going to change your heart, your body, your whole trajectory. And that's what happens when you meet someone like Kabir.
It feels naked. That's the other word. Yeah, you mentioned that last evening, is to shed the costumes, to shed the houses, and to walk in the open. That's
out in the open. Yes.
Yeah.
Even the process of us making the podcast is really coming out in the open. I'm waking up from my own journey where, I went into the comfort of dogma for a few years, and it just didn't work because it wasn't who I am, and I was never that before. And Adrian is coming also from his perspective. He's from more secular perspective, and he's waking up to the mystic in him. That's what I see.
Yes.
And we belong to a generation that's like confused.
Well, how would you not be confused? We're all confused. Everyone's confused at this moment because we're in a moment of trauma and terrible chaos and terrible suffering.
Yes.
And the possibilities of human extinction are real.
Yes, yes.
How could that not be radically confusing?
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you trust at the deepest level, that radical confusion can give birth to the new.
Yes.
A wholly new level of tenderness and vibrant openness and communion.
Absolutely.
Which is a source of tremendous meaning and joy.
Mm-hmm. And
there are great gifts in this.
What we've been doing after every episode, I've been writing poetry, I would say all my life. And
Wonderful.
and more recently I've been sharing them through the podcast after the episode. And I told Adrian this 3 days ago. I told him, I feel naked. Whenever I write a poem, I feel naked, and I'm okay with it now, and it is what it is.
Don't you think being naked is the greatest possible gift you give to anybody?
That's true.
That's the greatest gift.
It's also being alive.
Being alive.
Being alive.
But when you think about how you make the greatest friends of your life, it's not by being brilliant. Mm. It's not by being
perfect.
It's by those moments of heart-rending fragility and expansion that suddenly snares another heart, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's it. That's the whole of life.
Yeah.
Do we want to get into it?
Right.
Yeah, we are into it.
We are in.
This is
it. Let's keep this in the podcast. I love this.
Totally.
Because this is our field, I can see your beautiful faces. I can see how much you are so alive and how much you are in pain at what's going on and how much you are not just resting in that pain, but really wanting to understand beyond words, beyond concepts, what this pain might mean. Yeah. And for me, what this pain is the pain of childbirth. It's the pain of birth. It's what happens to a woman when she gives birth is monumental. It's being possessed by this birthing force that looks, from a man's point of view, and I've seen it, so many people give birth, looks like she's being torn apart. But she's not being torn apart. She's being given the supreme privilege of being the gateway for the birth of a new being. And this is what's happening in all of our psyches at the moment. Everything we think of as real is being dismembered, it's being burnt down, not to punish us, but to release us from these terrible, horrible dominator paradigm structures, which are quite clearly annihilating life.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're being born into life, and that's a scary, confusing process. But if you stay with it in trust and surrender and listen to the voices of the ones who really know this process, then something amazing gets born in you. And with that, the passion to change everything gets born in you. Together, we can do this.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for that. I think we're both actually really wanting to hear how you got drawn to Kabir to begin with. We know that in writing it was quite the experience. Very much you lived with him. You mentioned, multiple times that he was.
Yes.
You were living with him. He was inside of you.
Yes. Well, I've loved Kabir all my life. I'm 66 years old now, and I met Kabir first when I was 25 in Benares, in the city where he lived, which is called Varanasi now. But I can't help calling it Benares because for me, the word Benares is the most exotic, glorious word. It's like an unfolding of purple silk, Benares. And Benares is to me a very holy word. And it's a very wild, holy, gorgeous, terrible, amazing city, which is like a naked representation of every kind of opposite in life. And I went there first when I was 25. And I was overwhelmingly grateful to be in a place as mad as my own psyche. I just recognized finally that there was a place on earth as gorgeous and crazy as what I was beginning to understand the mystery really is. So I was out of my mind with joy. And I used to go in the early morning to the temples and sit there and just look and breathe everything in, the perfumes, the smells, the amazing adoration and people. And one day I was there and this old man came in, this beautiful old sadhu in rags, but with a face like an eagle. And he started to sing. And I can't begin to describe his singing, but it wasn't pretty. It wasn't manicured. It was wild singing, wild, holy, gorgeous singing. The whole place shook. And I plucked up my courage after he'd finished, and I said, "What were you singing?" And he spoke broken English, and I speak some Hindi. So between my broken Hindi and his broken English, we communicated totally because we were in the space, right?
Yes.
And he said, "I was singing My Beloved." And I said, "Who is your beloved?" "Kabir, Kabir, Kabir. How can you sing anything else but Kabir when you've met Kabir? Kabir changes everything." And then he translated for me what he was singing. And he was singing the song, "The beloved is in me, the beloved is in you, as life is hidden in every seed. So rubble your pride, my friend, and look for the beloved within you." And just those words pierced me. And I realized, oh my God, I'd not heard of Kabir, but that began a passionate search to find out everything about Kabir. So I read everything in different languages. I speak French and Italian and German and some Hindi. So I read all the amazing new books that were coming out on Kabir. They're incredible work done especially by two great women scholars, Charlotte Vaudeville, who's written the most astonishing book on Kabir. Very good translator in her own right, but every single aspect of Kabir's genius is explored by her with razor clear, deeply radical, wonderfully precise scholarship. And then there's this other wonderful woman translator, Linda Hess, who has exactly the same degree of excellence in her work, but who's also plunged deeply and mystically into the Kabir tradition and spent a lot of time with one of the greatest Kabiri singers, Kumar Gandharva. And if you're listening out there, go onto YouTube, get hold of Kumar Gandharva, Gandharva. He is simply the greatest singer that India's produced in the last 100 years. He's left, unfortunately, but his voice remains. So I plunged into the Kabir from the scholarly point of view, from the translations that were coming out, Robert Bly's magnificent translations. A lot of Bly in there. He's not really being very faithful to Kabir, but he did a marvelous job of bringing the perfume of the Kabiri spirit. But at the time, I was obsessed with Rumi, and I still remain obsessed with Rumi, because Rumi was my first intense beloved. I've never gotten over Rumi. I spent 40 years writing books on Rumi, recreating Rumi, going to Konya, plunging into the depths of Sufism. And Rumi is such an amazing universal poet. He's the other great universal poet with Kabir. The two of them are brothers. That you can't compare Everest and Kanchenjunga. They're both supremely great mountains of brilliance and beauty. So I didn't get around to really confronting my passion for Kabir until about 7 or 8 years ago, when it suddenly became clear to me that the reason why I hadn't done any deep work on Kabir is because I myself wasn't ready. You have to be ready for Kabir, because Kabir is so fierce, so demanding, so real. I had to become real or half real, before I could dare to step into attempting to transmit him in English. And then something quite dramatic happened in my life, which is I went through one of my periodic fits of bankruptcy. So, because I've lived a pretty wild life as a teacher, I haven't been user-friendly. I've tried to tell the truth, because I've known for 20 years that we were in an apocalyptic situation. And if you're teaching in America, that's the last thing people want to hear. They just want to hear everything's fine, it's all going to go well. It's not going to go well. We're going to have to die to be reborn. And in this time, I was compelled, and it was one of the great graces of my life, to go to live in a log cabin in Arkansas. And I paid $300 a month for this log cabin. And I thought, all my friends thought, oh my God, Andrew's now going off the deep end and we'll never see him again. He's a brave madman, but bye-bye, Andrew. But in fact, what happened was that was the best thing that ever happened. I lived in simplicity with the deer, and the hills of Arkansas and wonderful, raw, non-religious people who were just the best people you can possibly imagine. And I was grounded and earthed in a way that had never happened to me before. And I was humbled, radically humbled. And at that moment, he could enter, because I'd been bashed enough, battered enough, reduced enough, humbled enough to be able to hear the unmistakable intensity of truth in him. And then something absolutely extraordinary started to unfold, is that I really started to dream about him, to feel him around. And I realized that in meeting Kabir, at that time in my life, I was meeting the very, very best of myself. And that the very, very best of myself would now be honed and deeply transformed by this encounter with this lion of truth. And it was the most thrilling experience of my life. And it unleashed an immense torrent of creativity in me, because I started to write as Kabir. And I've written hundreds and hundreds of poems in Kabir's voice, with my voice mingling his. I haven't printed them, I haven't published them, because I wanted my first offering to be about him, because it would be an act of monstrous arrogance, even for someone like myself, to come out with my Kabir poems without spending time on really presenting the genius that gave birth to whatever I was able to say in this field. And what happened was that when you commune at that level of passion with a great being, you enter into the most intense imaginable sacred friendship with that being. This is known in all the mystical systems. The Catholics call this the communion of saints. The saints aren't in heaven or whatever heaven is. The saints are all around. They're still alive. They're vibrant. And if you commune with a saint out of a particular deep love for that saint will start to appear to you, talk to you, give you directions, guide you. You'll know them from within you. This is a tremendous mystery, but it's a mystery that mystics of all traditions have experienced. And what I experienced was that Kabir became my friend, myself, my voice, my heart. And it was very scary sometimes, because you can't approach the field of Kabir without being exposed to yourself. And all of us have so much further to go. And when you're in the field as clean and as incisive as the Kabir field is, you're faced all the time with your corruption, your stupidity, your sloth, your vanity, in my case, your desire for celebrity, all the stuff that swirls around in every human psyche. It makes it, befriending someone like Kabir means that you cannot anymore befriend your own darkness. It becomes intolerable to you. So there's a real sacrifice involved when you come into this kind of field. But the rewards for making that sacrifice are so astounding, because not only does he bitch slap you and hit you over the head, he's also got an arm around your shoulder saying, I know what you're going through. I've been through it. It's terrible facing who you really are, but you'll discover through this facing who you really are, and that will make everything worthwhile. So this was a most extraordinary process, and out of that came my book, Turn Me to Gold. And it couldn't have come in any other way. I wasn't ready to do it earlier on. I had to be cooked by Rumi to be ready to be eaten by Kabir. And I had to go through, in solitude in that log cabin, this turbulent, astounding relationship with him, to be able to be guided by him, to present the book in exactly the way that the Kabir field wanted, as a musical symphony in 4 parts that could open up all of the different aspects of the field to divine embodiment. So it was an amazing journey. It's not over. I'm just beginning a new journey now, going out talking to people like you about the journey. That's a new extension of this field.
And what I feel when you're talking...
What did I say make sense to you? Does it ring true to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking also about something that you had mentioned last night when you were talking about the book, and about the 2 energies that are mentioned in the Sufi tradition, which come from the divine name, which is the Jalal energy, which is that, the energy of awe, and breaking the ego.
Yes.
And the Jamal energy, which is the beauty and the tenderness, which is Rumi, and that's where you were cooked for you to get ready for Kabir, as you had mentioned.
Yes.
I just want to relate or mention the role of poetry and the role of poet as medium, and what does that mean to you? Yeah, as a
Well, what does it mean to you? You're a poet. I want to hear what it means to you.
everything.
Yes, me too.
I feel that the poetry and the poet are mere mediums of energy. It's like the connection between the sacred and the profane, the connection between the transcendent and the eminent. And it's only through poetry that we can contain the ineffable.
Yes. How beautiful. I can't speak after that. But I think that we're in a time where religious dogma no longer captures us.
Absolutely.
I think we're in a time when people telling us what to do and how to do it, and laying down laws, is frankly horse manure to us, because we've seen how many of those laws are not divinely inspired, but man-made and very crippling. And I think we're in the time of the birth of a universal mysticism that goes directly to the source, that wants the skinny about reality, that wants the essential disciplines, but doesn't want to be contained in any one dogmatic context. And poetry is by definition non-dogmatic. It's personal.
Yes.
It's born out of the depths of a unique, personal, ecstatic experience, especially when it's mystical poetry. And because it's personal, it transcends dogma. Because it's personal, it speaks directly from the enraptured heart to the enraptured heart. Because it's personal, it speaks above all the language of love.
Yes.
And the language of love is the language which we are all, whether we are atheists or non-atheists or Wiccans or whatever the hell
Whatever the label is.
whatever the label is, what we're famished for is that language of love.
Yes.
And every human being, when they hear Rumi, is thrilled, because Rumi is speaking as an ecstatic lover. And anyone who's ever known how love expands you will hear in Rumi, even if they don't understand the kind and vast of love and the vastness of the love that Rumi speaks about, they'll know, oh my God, this guy is a lover, and I have a lover within me, and I want that lover to grow, because I know that lover is the best of me and the most noble of me and the most wildly, deeply intelligent part of me, much more intelligent than my brain. So poetry has that unique power to take us into the field beyond good and evil, that is love in all of its majesty and power and beauty. And that's why poetry, mystical poetry now, is coming back in such an intense way, because we're being guided into a universal mysticism.
Yes.
Whose heart isn't laws and dogmas, but burning, rapturous, incisive, vibrant, violently beautiful and pure poetry. So the great new texts of the new universal mysticism will be the great mystical poets. Will be Rumi, and will be Kabir, and will be Hildegard of Bingen, and Hadovich of Antwerp, and
William Blake.
Sorry?
William Blake.
And William Blake, absolutely, and Rabia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Rabia,
God.
yes.
Rabia.
Yeah.
These are the great, sacred, humble prophets of this new universal mysticism. This has always been known in the great sacred cultures. In India, there are the Sanskrit Brahmins who love to quote the texts, but what do the people of India love? They love the songs of Kabir. What do shopkeepers sing? They don't sing the Upanishads. They sing Kabir because they want the raw, pure, naked. They need it because they're living very difficult lives, and sometimes threatened lives, and talking to them about the Upanishads is not going to help them. But what will help them in the most visceral way is that raw, pure, absolutely bare poetry of a great mystic like Kabir, who's their buddy, and whom they can feel have been through everything that they're going through, and it still goes through. And they can vibrate with that. So if you're in India, in Benares, for example, I remember one morning, relatively recently, going to the shop around the corner where I used to buy my soap with this wonderful old woman there, and we became great friends. And she, in the morning, would sing me Kabir. And she was a very poor woman. And she would tell me, Kabir has helped me live my life. I know that everything is God. I know I have no money. I may not have money for my evening meal, but because of my singing of this magnificent holy brother of mine that is Kabir, I can get through anything. And she told me that. That's what so many people experience. Poetry has that divine gift.
And I was just listening to the late Mary Oliver. I think she just passed away 2 weeks ago or 3. Yeah, and she said something about the role of religion. She said, well, the religion is there to remind us that we cannot rely on our will, but then the dogma comes in and flattens out everything and and it's reductionistic, much like a very staunch secular view is also reductionistic. Anything that is one side of something is reductionistic. And
poetry is all sides, all together.
Exactly.
And in a human experience that is non-judgmental.
Right.
That accepts all the pain and all the joy, that accepts all the struggle and all
the paradox of life.
The paradox, yeah.
Absolutely.
The great mystical poets are our best friends. The best friends you could ever have on your life journey.
It's where I go to. It's where I go to when I feel alone. It's my world. I love it. Yeah, mystical poetry.
Well, you're not alone when you're sitting with Rumi or Kabir. These guys have been through everything. They're with you right now, and they will give you the consolation, the wisdom you need. In Iran, they love Hafiz most of all. They say Hafiz is the greatest of all of the poets, even greater than Rumi.
He's powerful.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
But what they do when they're feeling miserable or alone or in front of a very difficult judgment, they pray and they open Hafiz. And they have discovered that is a kind of oracle.
I actually do that trick with my too.
You do it?
I do that.
I do it with Kabir and Rumi and Hafiz. And it never fails because they're present completely as complete divine human beings speaking intimately to us. And they can help us in ways that even the greatest scriptures can't help us.
I believe that.
It's all about friendship now, you see. I think that when we really understand as human beings what friendship is capable of, what great friends can feel and do and experience together.
Sacred friendship. Yes, yeah.
Then we will understand the full glory of what the poets have given us, because truly they are our deepest sacred friends.
In fact, that is one of the main messages within also the Sufi tradition is the sacred aspect of friendship and communion and sisterhood and brotherhood and all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that the deepest meaning of Shams and Rumi's relationship? Nobody really understood their relationship. Some thought they were physical lovers. That's not true. Some thought that they were just buddies. That's not true. Some people thought they were master and disciple. That's not true, because they were each master and each disciple.
Yes.
So all of those previous definitions vanish when the true glory of friendship appears, because they clearly loved each other, heart, mind, soul, and body. It was total love, but it was love that vibrated from the depths of the heart and included the whole field of the being. That's friendship. And we're just beginning to understand what friendship can be.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how wonderful, huh?
Yes.
This is what awaits the human race if it can only stop committing suicide and matricide. It awaits the revelation of universal mysticism, the revelation of a fundamental bond of sacred friendship between all beings, gay, straight, lesbian acrobats, cabaret drunks in the street. Who cares? They're human. They're alive. They're our friends potentially.
Yes, it's fear, it's ego, it's these are the things that need to break.
It's fear because you might suddenly find yourself embracing a dirty or drunk by the side of the street as your long-lost brother. That would scare you, but that's the truth.
Yes.
Look what Jesus is talking about, the same kind of love.
Mm.
He says, greater love hath no man than the man who lays down his life for his friends. That's the whole meaning of the mystical path, to lay down your life for your friends, so that your friends can taste the splendor of God through the life you lead and come into their own unique splendor and live it out with their own unique joy. And then you can encourage them in that. And they can tune you and you can tune them, and a lot of fun is had by all.
Absolutely. Yes.
We're frightened of joy more than anything else, you know. That's what's so scary. People say they're scared of suffering, but if you really look deeply into yourself, what you're really scared of is love, and really scared of is joy.
Yes.
It's going to take you out of any known yourself. You might find yourself loving all kinds of unlikely people, even people who you, before you thought of as your enemies, or as having mad, destructive views. You might suddenly find yourself feeling overwhelming compassion for Trump, for example. Which will deeply annoy some of your liberal friends, but is actually part of the great
It's part of
beauty.
the paradox. It's part of the paradox.
It's part of the paradox. It doesn't mean you don't oppose his policies, but it does mean you don't hate him, because you see the pain behind all the madness. And that madness can destroy the planet, but it doesn't mean that you have to hate him. Why should you hate him? Hate the policies. Do everything you can to unnerve those policies, but never find yourself in the place of hating any human being, because they are still, however batteredly, the image of God. And you have to keep alive, as a lover of God, that truth.
Keeping in mind our listeners, I'm thinking when we're talking about this type of energy and being sort of possessed with this radical love.
Yes, I like that. Possessed by this radical love. She speaks as a poet. That's why poetry is so important, because you said it in a phrase.
Thank you for seeing that.
That's an intensity of being, isn't it?
Thank you. And I have to say, I'm going to say it today, sometimes it's my own fear and you know, how I'm perceived by others, that I sometimes have to tone down that side of myself. But, you know, working with Adrian right now, I'm slowly, you know, not going to tone that down anymore.
My darling, this is the time of the empowered women.
Right.
We need women like you to speak fearlessly, to sing out your truth. I need it. Every single man, however evolved on this planet, needs to hear the voices of wild, empowered, holy women. Be one of those. Don't be frightened. Well, I tell you a story, which is one of my favorite stories. Happened to me when I lived in Paris. I had a great friend. She was a countess, and she was a coke addict, unfortunately. But she was the most luminous, wild, fearless person I ever knew. She was in her 70s, I was in my 30s, and we were inseparable. And she would take me to these glamorous dinner parties, and her favorite thing was to go off into the bathroom, smoke some coke, and come back to the table and tell everybody the truth about themselves at the table. And she was appallingly truthful.
Right.
And one day there was a whole of France was sitting around this table. I mean, the president was there, Yves Saint Laurent. It was a very, very grand party, and she'd known them all their lives, so she knew what a corrupt load of wankers they really were, these people. And she went from one to the other, and she just said, "You have been so selfish and narcissistic in the way that you look at the world. It's burning because all you've wanted is power." And she was possessed by sacred rage. It was just tearing her apart.
Yes.
And then she went around, and then the guy next to her, who happened to be head of Hermes, said, "Hélène, you are too much." And she, quick as a whip, said, "Bertrand, and you have never been enough."
Those words were used as a form of abuse, really. You are too much.
Right.
Yeah.
She wasn't too much.
Yeah.
She was agonizingly struggling to be totally real. She was on a quest for total authenticity, and that made her, to me, heart-rendingly beautiful and a great, great teacher. And I didn't judge her cook, I did, because if I'd been inside her mind, I would have been dead 30 years before. It was amazing that she was alive with what she knew. And she loved me passionately. I loved her passionately. But just seeing the way in which somebody who is possessed of radical love is treated
Yes.
made me really make the choice that I would never, ever silence my passion. You have to choose the passion of the truth. And you have to let the chips fall where they may. Because what you'll discover is that the real people will come to you. And you'll get rid of a lot of
I'm already seeing that.
And you have, if you have 5 real friends in this world who are authentic, that's everything. You don't need 100 acquaintances. You need those 5, and they can't come to you until you're completely real yourself, or trying to be. That's the great truth. You know that, don't you?
I do, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
So everybody out there who's frightened about being their real selves, stop it. It's time to tell the truth. It's time. Do it with dignity, do it with courtesy, but do it. Because even when people resist you, if you do it with force of your whole personality, you will shift something in them. And 3 or 4 days later, or maybe 5 years later, they will shift. And at this time, we can't afford not to be radically passionate about life, because the world is being destroyed. And we have to speak up, and we have to be ragged, and we have to call people to account. We have to, most of all, call ourselves to account. And we have to engage together in a sometimes painful, difficult, uncomfortable process, because we've all got to get much more honest, much more real, to get going together, to do whatever we can to stop the human race committing suicide and matricide.
Absolutely.
Which is what's happening.
We've done the physical destruction, the environmental destruction of ideas, and now it's our psyche that we need to salvage.
Well, Jung said the history of humanity is hanging by a thread, and that thread is the thread of the psyche. Well, that thread is fraying.
Yes.
And now just a tiny little bits left, and it frays altogether, the world's finished. Every animal will die, every plant will die, we will die. The seas, by 2049, the major scientists say, will have no fish in it. I was talking to a very important scientist. I wish I could say his name, but it was a private conversation last week. He's probably one of the world's leading scientists with immense power, and he said that the recent report of the UN, which said we have 12 years, is not true. We have 7 years. And that a lot of information is being deliberately kept back from the public, because the powers that control the information are terrified that when the public really knows what's really happening, there will be madness and riots on the street. That's where we really are. We're about to go through a massive 50 gigaton burst of methane from the melting tundra. The tundra in the Arctic has been keeping back a lot of methane gas, and it's now warming up, and it's going to release more CO2, more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than has been released since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We have no idea what's this going to mean.
Wow.
Yeah, this is very sobering, but my belief is that we don't need to be paralyzed by this. We need to be activated by this, and not by rage, but by joy.
By love.
We need to, by love for everybody, our friends, our family, animals. And that love has to be experienced in rawness and then lived in sacred action. That's why I've devoted my life to what I call sacred activism, to help people experience this deep, embodied, passionate, raw love that is divine love for each other and for everything, and then realize that that love is not completely real until it's become active. Yeah. If you weren't doing this podcast out of your love, you wouldn't be real. You'd still be having emotions and indulging in your emotions, but you put yourself out there so bravely. That's sacred activism. That's stepping up. That's saying, not in a bossy way, it's saying that we care and we want you to care and we want to hear how you care and we want to help you care more, and so that we can care more, so that we can come together more, to do more together, to really wake the human race up and give people hope and energy in a time of despair, so that instead of being paralyzed by this exploding crisis, we use it in the deepest sense to get real, get down, and get going. So there's a huge birth taking place, and we're part of it, you and I. And the people listening to this are part of it. And we can do this together.
Can you talk more about that, the radical embodiment? Because that is something that is just, it's a thread that I'm hearing in Kabir's poetry and what you're saying right now. This is not intellectualizing our way out of the mess. It is...
Oh, God, no, that's what created the mess. We've been dipped
being practical.
Head.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is not an ascending path. It sounds like it's a descent. It's a coming down.
It's both.
Well,
basically...
I know. I was just going to say what I heard last night when you were talking was to experience the ecstasy, but to bring that into the ordinary life, and that's sort of that downward energy, bringing it into the body and through our actions, is how we're going to be able to get through to the other side of this evolution.
That's so beautiful. I'm so glad you heard that, because what's happening in a lot of New Age spirituality is that are using the ecstasy as a drug to leave being here, to get out of being here and to go to some otherwhere. This is disembodied, ungrounded spirituality. It's actually a higher form of narcissism, and it's very dangerous because it's using the highest experience for not the highest ends. The real way, as has been shown us by the great prophets and the great embodied divine mystics such as Jesus and the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Rumi and Kabir, and other great women masters like Teresa of Avila and Hadovich, the real way is to allow yourself to experience that ecstasy and be taken to the source of life itself, that is ecstatic love and ecstatic joy. And then, through opening completely, allow that ecstasy and that joy to irradiate your mind, to come down into the depths of your heart and open your heart completely to its presence in every living thing, in every flea, in every stone, because the ecstatic light is actually the source of everything. Everything is crystallized light energy, and this is what quantum physics is discovering now. So science and mysticism are revealing the same paradoxical, amazing reality, that everything is energy, light energy. Then, and this is what the embodied mystics tell us, the great masters of embodiment, and Jesus is one of them, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, is another, and Kabir is another. They say that then it needs to come down into the depths of the body itself, because the body is secretly crystallized light energy also, and experiencing that in the depths of your cells grounds you, makes you strong, makes you powerful, makes your love real. And that love cannot be completely real and completely embodied until it is acted on in a passion for justice and in a compassionate passion of love towards all beings, not just human beings, but animals, insects, everything. That's the complete human divine experience, and that's the one that is struggling to be born against immense odds on the earth. And actually our crisis, which seems so horrific and is so horrific, is perfectly designed to be the birthing canal of this, because nothing else could possibly work in our situation. When you're in increasingly that state of radical love, embodied in the mind, embodied in the heart, embodied in the body, and embodied in real sacred action based on your own deepest talents and your deepest abilities, you don't care whether somebody's a Muslim or a Hindu or a Christian or an atheist. You don't care whether they agree with you or don't agree with you. All you see is that the world is dying and that you need to put love into action in your own unique way with your great heart friends, and that's the only game in town. And that is the most important possible thing that you could do with your life at this moment. And when you get that, it actually gives you enormous joy and peace and strength and passionate energy, even in the middle of all of this despair. So you, instead of being somebody who gets despairing and paralyzed and adds to the problem. You become someone who takes water to the thirsty, who can go in to visit a friend who's going through a massive depression because they feel that they can't do anything and say, don't be fooled by the fact that the world may be ending. Don't let that depress you. Don't let that stop you discovering who you really are. Join me. We'll do it together. I'll help you catch flame with eternal joy, and we'll do something fabulous together, and we'll make creative projects together. And even if it all goes, and it might, we won't have wasted our lives, because we will have lived our lives in joy and peace and resilience and passion, and we will have found meaning, and we will, above all, have loved each other truly.
And it's, in a way, that's piercing through the veils to get to the gem.
Absolutely.
Living that way. So when you're
it's the only way, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We all know, yeah.
It's the only way. When we're talking about sacred activism, it's and spiritual bypass in the New Age movements, it's also important to recognize that there is a lot of problematic things happening within activism too.
Oh, God, yes, yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's why, yes. What would you say they were?
Well, it's the sacred aspect is missing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what does that lead to, in your opinion, in activism?
A lot of reactionary behavior.
Yes.
A lot of ego inflation. Yes.
And not acknowledging the shadow or integrating it.
Yes.
Because that is where the gifts come from. I mean, we talk about the light coming out of the darkness.
Yes.
But if we don't acknowledge it, if we don't even talk about it, then we're being very naive about the situation.
And we're in a way indulging in self-righteousness.
Yes.
And making ourselves feel good by denouncing other people. You know, the traditional mystics have had the shadow of wanting to go off into the light and not be here in relationships and responsibilities to the real world. That's been the shadow of all the patriarchal mystical systems.
Yes.
The activists, as they've evolved, have had the shadow of self-righteousness, of blaming others, of wanting to feel above others because they've got the real skinny and everybody else is just hopelessly deluded. Both are afflicted by profound kinds of narcissism and very dangerous kinds of narcissism. The danger of the mystic's narcissism is that it has drained this world of its sacred significance. It's demonized the body. It's made relationships part of illusion instead of the place where we learn so many holy and important truths. It's made a world in which animals are treated as inferior to us because we're supposed to have the superior consciousness, with the disastrous genocidal results that we see. That's the responsibility of those mystics who got addicted to transcendence. But the activists have also got a tremendous responsibility for the darkness of this situation, because instead of really staying humble and loving and compassionate while pursuing just causes, they have been very often beacons of ego-ridden jostling amongst themselves, and also deep self-righteousness, so that they put off people who would otherwise want to join them, who would want to be somebody who's self-righteously demonizing and denouncing every other human being that doesn't agree with them. Mm-hmm. Every normal human being knows that that's not the way. So activists are their own worst enemies.
Creating
But the good news often. But the amazing thing is, and this is where sacred activism is so important, is that if you bring the best of the mystic, which is the passion to unite with God, the source of reality, together with the best of the activist, the passion to uphold the truth of justice, which is a noble, holy passion, and let's deny activists that. They do have that. If you bring them together, then you have a whole truth. You have people who are deeply grounded and rooted in the sacred, humble before the sacred, deeply aware that they need to constantly, vigilantly work on their selfishness, on their self-righteousness, on their desire to demonize others instead of recognizing others as aspects of themselves. And you have people committed to putting the sacred into living, wise, focused, radical action. And that's the new kind of human being that's being born now. And it cannot be born either through the old mystic way or through the old activist way, but it can be born through this mysterious fusion that happens. And we've seen it work. Gandhi was that kind of person. Gandhi's genius was that he didn't demonize the British. He knew exactly how dangerous the British were. And I come from an imperial family. I was born to an imperial family, so I know how dangerous the British were. I got the scars on my psyche to prove it. But Gandhi's genius was to say to the British, I honor you. I don't hate you. I just think that you're not living up to your own deepest principles because you're telling us that you're the apostles of democracy and freedom. Where is the democracy in India and where is the freedom in India? So that was amazing because the British would have been a lot more comfortable had Gandhi been demonizing them all the time. He made them deeply uncomfortable because he held up a mirror to them of their own deepest principles and then very tenderly said to them, I honor these principles. They've changed my life, but where are you acting on them? And he then brought in a whole extraordinary system of the profoundest sacred activism, which he called satyagraha, soul force, which was a commitment to non-violent resistance. It wasn't just sitting passive and praying. They would go out in the streets and risk their lives, but they would never fight back because they knew that fighting back would just activate tremendous violence, and that violence of any kind would lead to more violence. And over time, this astounding practice unseated the biggest empire, the most powerful empire the world has ever seen. So it works. We've seen it work. We saw it work too with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King said to the whites, are you crazy? You're supposed to believe in Jesus and you're treating your black brothers and sisters like worse than dogs. And he said to the blacks, I know why you hate the whites, but the way through is never the way through of hatred. We have to love our white brothers. And both resisted him until they realized that he was holding the mystery of the authentic Christ consciousness. And that's why Martin Luther King has been such a source of inspiration. And that's why America hasn't yet, and may still, descend into a bloodbath. Because Martin said to both sides, we've got to go forward to honoring the truth of love in action. We've seen it work in Poland with Lech Walesa. Nonviolent resistance fortified by deep spiritual strength works to unseat terrifying difficulties if it's put into practice by people who are disciplined, humble, constantly working on their shadow, and constantly opening up deeper and deeper to divine love. And this is the only thing that can work in a situation like ours, for the simple reason is that the dark has all the power. So if we get violent and crazy, they'll just shoot us in the streets. They'll get rid of us in a second. Why wouldn't they? But if we rise from the depths of our truth together, loving even the perpetrators and the tyrants, even extending love and hope and possibility to them, constantly saying to them, why do you choose this miserable lust for power when you could be living the life of the illumined heart? Why do you choose your Malibu mansions with their fortresses when you could actually be dancing with us in the dance halls of ecstasy? Why do you choose a narrow life rooted in selfishness when you could live the life of expansive truth? Why? Come to the party.
Andrew, you bring up so many important issues that are at the heart of what's happening nowadays. So many very, I don't even know what to say, but there are so many things that are charged out there. And as we're speaking, people are having Twitter wars, internet wars on the issues that you brought up. I think a part of the path is shadow work. Not I think, it is part of the path. And shadow work...
It's the essential part, yeah.
Exactly. And the shadow work includes also the psychological aspects. And in a way, it's the merging of the psychological and the spiritual. We have to recognize too that people do carry their individual wounds, and if people don't address those individual wounds, then they create some of the thickest veils, and it's just wallowing in narcissistic wounding and just perpetuating.
Well, haven't you done that yourself?
I have, and that's
Me too,
where I'm speaking
yeah.
from. I have
Exactly.
done that.
I think it's important to say that.
Yes.
I think we all are tempted, like you said, you had this period of dogma.
Exactly. And
That's because you were wounded and you needed certainty and you needed to get out of your wound
absolutely.
too soon, right?
Absolutely. I needed clear answers, and it was a comfort.
Yeah, we were just saying this morning that at the time was a shield for you, it protected you, but it became your prison.
Yes.
And there has to be a time that we are ready to let go of the shield.
Absolutely.
To be free.
Exactly.
And that may be what you're feeling too in this rawness. You've had a shield of secularism and seeing that from a secular, and now that's going. We all have shields, and they're created out of our trauma. There's an amazing teacher, I hope you know him, his name is Jeff Brown, and he's just about to produce this incredible book called Grounded Spirituality. And Jeff has an extraordinarily rich and detailed and profound vision of how we really need to pay attention to the traumas and the physical blocks that make us addicts of certainty that is disembodied. Because otherwise we'll never get to a place where we're just human beings, ragged human beings in an endless process, helping each other through love and through communion grow in this amazing experience that is divine human life. But that takes a lot of work. It is painful to confront the pain of the past, and it's very humbling.
It is. It's a lifetime journey. And also, I want to mention that we need to recognize that what we're talking about is not reaching a perfected state, that we will still care about the little things in life, and that's part of it. That's part of the path. We will, it's okay to want the finer things in life, and sometimes that's okay too. And it doesn't mean rejecting everything.
Oh no, that's part of the patriarchal separation and dualism too, isn't it?
Yes.
It's more than that. I think we're looking for wholeness, not perfection.
Absolutely.
Only the divine is perfect. As Jesus says, when somebody's trying to praise him, he says, "Oh, stop it. My righteousness is as rags before the Lord." If you don't know that about yourself, you know nothing. And it makes you pompous and the secret guru trying to lord it over others. And that's a catastrophe. In fact, those failings we call failings are our greatest friends because they keep us human. So when you suddenly want to get crazy and angry at somebody, and you stop it, I hope, but then you realize, oh my God, I've got to be vigilant on this side of myself, and I've got to explore more the wound that comes from this.
Yes, there goes my anger, there goes my jealousy, there goes, these things don't go away. It's part of being human. Yeah.
But you do get more distance on them,
right?
And you do get really clearer and clearer indications of where they come from in the torment of your past.
Yes.
And that is the beginning of liberation, because instead of indulging them, you can look at them compassionately. You can even have compassion for yourself getting angry, because you realize that was because you were locked in a room, or your mother abandoned you, or you were treated like garbage, So you can be the mother to your own self, and slowly those bursts will get less, and more control you'll have, not in a patriarchal way, but in a way of compassionate restraint of the dark in yourself. And this is that makes you really happy when that starts to happen in you. That's the great advantage of living to an older age, as you realize, oh yes, I'm not condemned to be me all the time. I can expand this. I don't have to act as I did in the past. It can be changed.
Yes, so when I tell some of my friends, I actually can't wait to grow older, because I know that I'm hoping that some of my neuroses will diminish as I grow older, hopefully. And
they may become more fruitful.
Yes, yeah.
They won't probably diminish, but you'll be able to be more compassionate towards them.
Because sometimes it feels like, when will this go away? When will this anger go away? But yeah.
But anger isn't always wrong, is it? I mean, part of the patriarchy has been to say that anger is always wrong. Anger is sometimes the sacred passion in you waking up. It's conscience speaking. It's saying, this has got to stop. Without transformed anger, we can't go forward. If we're just angry, we demonize. But if we're not angry, we can be very passive in the face of massive injustice. The trick is to find what I call sacred anger. Jesus was angry at amazing moments. One moment when he overturned the tables in the temple, but his anger was a gift to those who were doing that garbage, because he was saying to them, is this what you're going to try and do? Sell God in the temple? Are you out of your minds? He was trying to help them. He was trying to reach them by his anger. He wasn't trying to kill them. He was trying to break through their complacency and their greed to reveal the possibilities of a much larger life. I've seen the Dalai Lama wildly angry. I mean, you may find that amazing because the Dalai Lama is so beautiful and so, but the Dalai Lama has sacred anger. Every great teacher has to have sacred anger, and every great human being has to have it, but has to purify the sources of that anger so it becomes the anger of truth and not the expression of neurosis.
Right.
Yes. That's the title, Turn Me to Gold, right? The transformation of the dark with the gold emerging from the dark.
Yes. Because the great discovery of the path of embodiment is it isn't the light alone that does the work. The dark is also sacred. Your lust is sacred, your anger is sacred, not as they are in their raw state, but as they will be when lust is turned into a passion to communicate and to reach out, and when anger is turned into a clear voice of truth calling people to sacred action. That's the turning to gold. So you don't reject things because you can't get rid of them. You can't amputate these things that belong to you because the light and the dark are meant to dance inside you. What you can do through increasing experience of the light is grow strong in clarity so that you will know the difference in your lust between the lust for power and the deep passion to reach out and communicate, and you'll choose the second, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it gives you more joy, and it doesn't end in suffering. And that is a very subtle operation, but it can happen. But it has to happen through being compassionate to yourself. You have to be compassionate to why you are so wounded in some ways. But you haven't got to have idiot compassion and just say, well, I was wounded, so therefore I have absolutely every right to be as angry as I want. You've got to start working with your anger. Neither reject it nor embrace it, but work with the mystery to transmute it into golden anger, the golden anger of Rumi, the golden anger of Shams, the golden anger of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the golden anger of Jesus, the golden, gorgeous lion anger of Kabir. My God, that's the majesty of Jalal, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
I'm mindful of time, and I want to make sure that you get a chance. You get a chance to share. We're mindful also of young listeners, young seekers out there. I mean, right now we're talking to a living legend, an elder. Is there anything that you feel is really important that they hear right now? The young the next generation of activists that you would like to get across.
I think the most important thing that I could say to you is that the most single important thing that you need is a simple daily spiritual practice, because you're going into the most profound crisis that humanity's ever faced. I believe in you. I believe in the strength in you, and I believe in the courage that you have. I think you're amazing. But I want you to be shielded by deep spiritual knowledge. I want you to be balanced in the depth of yourself, because you're going to need that knowledge and that peace and that strength so much, because there were many defeats before great victories. And you need to be able to endure those defeats without losing your hope. And you can only endure the defeats that are inevitable, because the people in power, the dark forces in power, and they are dark, are not going to yield easily. However right you are, however beautiful your actions are, they're going to hold on to power, and they're going to be very unscrupulous, and there's going to be a great deal of suffering. So prepare yourselves without being afraid, and know that if you do deep spiritual practice in faith, you will be given unimaginable strength and unimaginable power. And over time, your deepest impulses will become realized, and you'll be the pioneers of a whole new way of being and doing everything. If you want the most beautiful possible statement of this, read the Dalai Lama's new book, which is addressed to you from the holiest man on the planet and the wisest man on the planet who's really lived through everything. It's called A Call for Revolution, and it's a magnificent statement of everything I've just said. He says it from the authority of his absolutely amazing life, and he says it with such humility and such belief in you. I share his belief. The other thing that's very important, I think, now is to realize that it can only be done by all of us together. You need us and we need you. You need to listen to the old ones who've been through a great deal and who have certain marvelous things to share with you. I know you must think our generation is catastrophically self-absorbed, and I don't blame you because the baby boomers have so signally failed you. But there have been some of us who've known this throughout this long orgy of greed, and we've been fighting in the trenches, sometimes very painfully and unsuccessfully for a long time. But some of us have come to a place of real resolution and real joy and real knowledge, and we have priceless things to share with you. And what you have to give us is you, your beauty, your intelligence, your passion, your incredible desire to change this world. And between you and us, we can help immensely the world wake up. So don't abandon your elders, and don't go with the boring old elders who think they know anything. Go with the elders who are really on fire with love and want to give you the very best of what they know in the very best way, because we are ready to serve you, to help you, to be at your feet, to give you everything we know, because we know you're going to need every bit of what we know to go forward and be the pioneers of a new world.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bless your soul.
Well, I'm here, and I'm not the only one, obviously. There are lots of us out here who are absolutely crazy about you and want to be of help to you and want to learn your language to be of help to you, because we were brought up in a different language, and we're prepared to listen deeply to find out how we can translate what we know into ways that you can get. But we've learned timeless truths, and it's cost us our many nights of pain and heartbreak. Don't waste our suffering, because it's born bliss in us, and we want to give it to you because you're going to go through even greater suffering and you'll need it.
Thank you.
And thank you for paving the way. I mean, just to activate, to break the inertia, to get things going.
Well, that was my job. That was the job of the best of our generation. And there are many of us on the planet now, and we're ready to help. And it was a terrible job, because it's been the most appalling suffering, seeing my generation conspire with the death of the planet through greed and vanity and the new age garbage and all the rest of it. But it has woken some of us up, and it has given us absolute resolution to continue until we die as sacred activists. I'm not retiring. I'm not giving up. Even if I'm in a wheelchair, I'll be speaking truth to power. Especially, there's one nun I met who's 95 called Sister Rosa. Oh my God. She's in a wheelchair and she lives in Ohio. And every time everything goes bad in Ohio, Sister Rosa wheels herself to wherever it's going bad. And she talks to the cameras and she just lays it on them. You cannot imagine. She's not giving up. I'm not giving up. I'll be there until the end with you. And so will all of us who are like me and who really know that everything is at stake now, but also everything is possible in an unimaginable way.
And may we be ready to receive.
And may we be ready to listen and ready to truly hold all the young in our arms, and really, instead, not from a position of superiority, but from a position of deep compassion, may we be ready to listen.
From a position of mutuality.
Yeah. We need each other.
Yes.
I'm bored to death with the baby boomers, and most of the people between 35 and 70 seem to be dead at this moment. Or, they bought the corporate myth. Right. So the people who are going to really shift this, there are some amazing people in their 40s, I must say, who are waking up. But it's the young who are going to carry the horror of
I'm
this.
actually 37, so...
I mean 37 and 50. you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
They bought the let's go out and make money and eat, drink, and is merry. Everything's ending. We can't do anything. Let's just sit in our yachts and watch the world burn. This is a sick and decadent response, and I have nothing whatever to. There's nothing you can do with those people except hope God bashes them on the head with a saucepan.
Thank you.
The bitch slap.
Yeah, and of course God is capable of that. So some of them may wake up and be amazing radicals soon. You never know. Anything can happen.
Exactly.
It's just like this. So nobody's left out of our embrace.
Right.
But the chances are slim in the cases of most of the people I know, I have to say. But the young are in this state of confusion and despair, which is a very fertile state for true transformation. Now we need to really give them everything that we can to help encourage that. And the poetry of Kabir and the poetry of Turn Me to Gold and the poetry that of Rumi will be such a wonderful way to do that. And music and dance, which are the traditional ways anyway, because the Bushmen used that. I think young people are much more likely to be inspired by poetry and sacred music and sacred dance and sacred physical activity like sacred yoga than they are to be by people pontificating them about religious platitudes and dogmas. They know all that stuff is horse manure. They want the real stuff. They want the real experience. And there's some of us who are not yet in wheelchairs who can actually help them arrive there. So I count me in.
You can dance in your wheelchair too, so that's fine.
Oh, of course you can. I know lots of people who do, actually.
Can you recite one of Kabir's poems as a closing?
Absolutely. Yeah. What shall I do? I'll recite the first poem I ever heard from him, which is still my favorite of his poems, actually. But whenever I try to look for a poem in my book, it hides from me. This is Kabir's game, you see. But it's such an incredible poem. Oh, this is so beautiful. This is for all of you young people. I hope you can hear it in such a way that you realize this is truth speaking. And this is your truth. This is what, if you take the path humbly, you'll find out. I found this out. And I was crazy as a loon when I was young and didn't believe in anything. But life brought me to my knees and I opened my heart to the beloved. And the beloved took me to awakening. So if it's possible for me, it's possible for you. Go for it. The beloved is in me and the beloved is in you, as life is hidden in every seed. So rubble your pride, my friend, and look for him within you. When I sit in the heart of his world, 1,000,000 suns blaze with light, a burning blue sea spreads across the sky, life's turmoil falls quiet, all the stains of suffering wash away. Listen to the unstruck bells and drums. Love is here. Plunge into its rapture. Rains pour down without water. Rivers are streams of light. How could I ever express how blessed I feel to revel in such vast ecstasy in my own body? This is the music of soul and soul meeting, of the forgetting of all grief. This is the music that transcends all coming and going. Kabir isn't escaping into ecstasy. Kabir is embodying that ecstasy and then living out a life of profound, beautiful service to all beings, grounded in that joy. There is a way to stay in that joy, my dear friends, even in the middle of the crumbling and burning of the world. Find that way. You're going to need it. And if you find that way and act from that, miracles will happen. Just wait and see.
Thank you so much, Andrew. To be continued.
I hope so. You're beautiful people. I'm honored to be with you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you.
Please send me a link for this.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's on all of my people too.
Like Thao was saying, in post-production, we actually continue this. So she writes an original poem inspired by our conversation. So we're going
You send all of it to me so I can get all of your podcasts out to all of my friends so they can come and see you.
Thank you so much.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I would. It would be amazing for me to know that you're listening to my poetry. So that would be.
I would be thrilled, and I would listen to every word of it.
Thank you.
And I'll probably steal it.
That's okay. Thank you. Love you too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. You asked me to quell all inner turmoil. You asked me to embrace silence and renounce self-formations. You said self-transformation begins where time ends. Peel away layer upon layer of identities and relinquish your name. You looked into my eyes. I'm nobody. Who are you? I'm a woman of dark origins. Fragmented pieces of self float inside dark recesses of the mind. Teach me how to become whole. Teach me how to surrender to a rhythmical and ubiquitous world. I have journeyed far to find a teacher. Forgive me and my immaturity. Quench my questions. Are you nobody too? How do I shore up the waves of anonymity? How do I unsaddle after years of blindly riding through unknown multiple routes? Like the comic Mullah Nasruddin who raced through the marketplace on his donkey. Where are you going? Friends beseeched. I'm busy looking for my donkey, Nasruddin answered. I have no donkey to find. Then there's a pair of us. You and I are nobodies. Our limbs can cage us or become wings which spread over the ocean of consciousness. Can I be your disciple? A mere initiate of a well-trodden path? Can I join the chain of hands? Let us abandon our names because we are restless and it is dreary out there. You and I are the same. Therein lies true freedom, you said. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. This marks the end of our winter season. We'll be taking a 3-week break from our regular Sunday releases to rest, reflect, and bring some new life into our spring season, which starts in April. We have an incredible group of guests lined up, and we can't wait to bring them to you. We want to thank all our early listeners for tuning in and sharing your feedback. We are thrilled to share that we recently made it on to the new and noteworthy list on iTunes under the category Religion and Spirituality. This was a goal we set for ourselves back in January, so we're pretty stoked. There are 2 ways to help us grow and reach more people. 1 is to leave us a review on iTunes. 2 is to share an episode with someone you know who will find our conversations meaningful. You can follow us on social media at Soulspace Pod, at Soulspace POD. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.